to the first episode of NYCA Dynasty Talk. And you're probably asking yourself, what is NYCA anyways? And what we did is we come up with New York, California. So California, we have Ralph, New York, and together we make up NYCA. You can find me, Mike Valverde, on Twitter at RFL Red Zone, and Ralph, you can find him at Reverend Ralph. So what we'll be doing today is discussing rookie quarterbacks and basically how they fit in their new offensive systems, which is going to give you a general idea of who they are, what they're going to do, and that way when you get prepared for your draft coming up, you're going to see, where we project them and how you probably can manage and direct your draft accordingly. Foremost, the only guy really who's going to be starting the season as quarterback week 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, 6'3", 221 out of LSU. So Ralph, I know you're a good college guy. You got a great mind on these college players. Tell us a little bit about Joe Burrow and sort of that Zach Taylor RPO system, especially after playing under Matt Rule RPO system. What are we looking for, Joe Burrow, here?
Well, I think what we're looking for is, he's going to be the starter from day one, as you mentioned. So in dynasty drafts, here is a player that, if you play in those 2 quarterback setups, he could be somebody that you could start on a weekly basis. If it's a 1 quarterback setup, I see him as more as a matchups type guy in his rookie year. But overall, obviously in dynasty, you're drafting for the long term, and I love him in terms of being that franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years or so. He's somebody that comes with accuracy, mobility, pocket awareness. And the other quality I like about him is that he's extremely competitive. If you watch him during interviews, you could just sense, that killer instinct that borders a little bit on cockiness, which isn't always a bad thing with quarterbacks. So, and he has those qualities. Now, the other thing that you're projecting as well now is the team he's going to play on in the Cincinnati Bengals, and they haven't been any good for a long time. However, the roster is getting better, and the offense in particular, I think, is a good spot for Joe Burrow. You take a look at the weapons he's going to be surrounded with: A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, Auden Tate, T. Higgins. And then in the backfield, he has a legit RB1 in Joe Mixon that's going to be able to put up 1,000 yards annually, for the next few years, barring any health issues. So I think that, Joe Burrow is the type of guy that you could use this year. You're going to be able to use him and build around him in terms of fantasy for the next few years. And there's really not much not to like about Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point, especially with the wide receivers. And I'm also kind of concerned about them as well. So you have A.J. Green, right? He's his contract, he's only playing this year. We don't know if he's going to sign with them next year. We don't know his future. John Ross, they declined his 5-year contract. So he's not going to be there next season. And then you have Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, as you mentioned. Is that going to be enough, do you think, to sort of give those whatever 5 years that you're looking for as a quarterback for Joe Burrow? And then offensive line too, they allowed 48 sacks last year too. So, but Burrow is definitely more mobile than Dalton. So that sack number is probably going to decrease. What do you see as far as his weapons in that offensive line?
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to bring up the offensive line, and it was probably the biggest weakness of the team in general last year. But, in 2020, they are going to get their 2019 first-round pick back in Jonah Williams. Yep. So him alone at left tackle is going to make a difference. And also, they drafted Hakeem Adeniji in the 6th round. And he's a versatile offensive lineman. I think eventually they're going to find a spot for him in that front 5. And so I think that although it's not there yet, I think some pieces are coming together on that offensive line. And so I think that probably maybe by the end of the season, you're going to see some improvement in terms of the pass protection for Joe Burrow. And here's the other thing about the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know they have a bad reputation. I know they've been bad for a long time. However, they've had a lead in 12 of their 16 games at some point during their games in 2019. And so with better quarterback play, and I'm not saying they're a playoff team in 2020, far from it, but with better quarterback play, I could see them winning another 2 to 3 games and then build off of that in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think those are very good points, especially the offensive line, because that offensive line really needs an upgrade. As you said, you get the rookie back, and then you added a rookie to the situation. So even though that's not great, they're going to take time to cohesive. You're looking at 2 good pieces to the puzzle to already start forming and coming together, which is only going to help him later down on the line. Now with Joe Mixon, he's going to have to be better. He just was not good last year. I mean, he at the end of the year, as the year went on and last, 5-6 weeks, he got better, but there were so many missing weeks where he put up like almost 0 points for you. How do you see the Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow combination working together? Do you see that maybe Joe Mixon will be better, will be more relied on? Those kind of things. Also, you have looking at Joe Burrow, who only had really 1 good year in an RPO system with great talent around him. Is he really that good?
Well, I think he is, and even if he flounders in his first few weeks, I go back to his competitiveness. I go back to his hard work ethic. I go back to his intelligence, the intangibles, if you will. I think that, he's got that mindset to where, he is going to get better. He is going to work hard. He is going to get together with the coaches. And I think he is very much a coachable guy. How things are going to work out with Mixon. Look, I think, Mixon had a lot of down weeks last year, and he was an overall disappointment for fantasy owners. But, the guy is athletic. He's elusive. He is versatile. He can catch passes out of the backfield, and he's young. So I think that, he should have at least 2 to 3 more prime years ahead of him. And I think that's going to help out Burrow. But to me, the key lies in the offensive line. Are they going to be able to protect Burrow? Are they going to be able to create holes for Joe Mixon? That part of the team has to come together. And again, I'm not expecting anything out of this team. If I'm a Cincinnati fan, all I want to see is improvement, steady improvement. And as a fantasy owner, as far as Joe Burrow is concerned, if you got a good team, you have better quarterbacks, put him on your practice squad. There's no reason to use him in his first year on your active roster if you don't have to. But if you're not deep, then I think he's definitely a matchups play.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe mid year 2. Definitely year 3. I think you're going to really see the rewards coming out of Joe Burrow, because I think, as we're talking about the RPO system, he's comfortable in that, and he's very successful with that as well. So I definitely see that being the situation for him.
No doubt. Totally agree.
So did you want to touch on Tua?
In my rankings,
if you can pronounce his last name correctly.
Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
But in my personal rankings, I actually have Justin Herbert ahead of Tua Tagovailoa, and the main reason it all boils down to durability. Now, as we know, Tua had a bad hip injury that ended his last season at Alabama early, and he also has some lower body ankle injuries that he's dealing with as well. And so, to me, that would have me worried sick. Now, people might say, well, the Miami Dolphins didn't have any concerns about it. They took him in the top 5. I also think that see, the thing with Miami is, number one, they had 14 picks. So they were able to, maybe take a chance on, some guys who were either character or injury risks. But I'm not saying that Tua wasn't a good pick. I think that his upside, his talent, his skill set is elite, very much comparable to Joe Burrow. However, I think that within that Miami Dolphin fan base, I think there was such a demand, there was such a clamoring for the team to go out and get Tua Tagovailoa. And as you could see, I mean, the guy's already selling tons of jerseys right now, and he hasn't even played a game yet. So I think there was a little bit of that went into the Dolphins picking him as high as they did. But however, in fantasy, I'm not a Miami Dolphin fan. I'm not a fan. I try not to be a fanboy as a fantasy player. I think Justin Herbert just makes me sleep better at night, just because he's got the size. He doesn't come with those injury question marks that Tua Tagovailoa comes with, and so I'm taking him number 2 in a dynasty draft as in terms of quarterbacks. As far as and now the big question with Herbert is,
I agree with you there. I agree with you there. I think Herbert is definitely the number 2 guy, and what a lot of people are comparing him to Josh Allen. There are some comps with Tannehill and Wentz, but which one do you think of the 3, Tannehill, Wentz, and Allen? Which one do you think is the most comparable to Herbert?
I would say Tannehill, because with Josh Allen, you're talking about elite athletic ability in terms of running with the football, taking off and, breaking off a 20, 30-yard scamper. That's something that Josh Allen can do. I don't see Justin Herbert having that type of ability. I think he profiles as more of a Ryan Tannehill type. And the other thing with Josh Allen is that his accuracy is just way off. And I think Herbert's ability or his ball placement ability is a lot better than Josh Allen. And I also think from that aspect, he is more comparable to Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I could see that, because if you're looking at like mobility, Herbert has mobility. He can run, but he's not as mobile as Josh Allen. And then if you're looking at accuracy, he's better than Allen accurate wise, but he's comparable to Tannehill running, but better accuracy than Tannehill. So I think it's one of those where maybe he's just in the middle of maybe he's a combination of Tannehill and Josh Allen.
Right. And the thing with Justin Herbert is, is he perfect from an accuracy standpoint? No, far from it. When he plays from a clean pocket, he can drop those balls in from 50 yards, 60 yards. He throws frozen ropes. However, the big question with him is, in terms of accuracy, can he complete a lot of those passes, or can he be on the mark with a lot of those passes from a muddied pocket? So that's what we need to see from Justin Herbert. The other concerns with him are his ability to throw with anticipation and his touch. Those are 2 aspects that he needs to refine. But I don't know what the Chargers are thinking as far as when he'll be ready to start. Obviously, Tyrod Taylor is the placeholder. I don't see him playing 16 games. It's a matter of when, not if, Herbert steps in his rookie year and becomes the field general there and starts for the San Diego Chargers. But I think that there's a lot to work with, as we mentioned: size, 6'6", accuracy, athletic ability to adjust his arm angle and throw those frozen ropes. I mean, quarterbacks like this don't grow on trees. So at times he was disappointing, but I think you saw, as the season wore on, I think you saw him become more confident. I think you saw him become more vocal. And even in the Senior Bowl, you saw, a little bit of those leadership skills starting to emerge in Justin Herbert. So, I mean, if he's there, I need a quarterback in my dynasty draft. I'd be pretty damn excited about Justin Herbert.
Now, a couple of things that I see kind of problems going into the future with. You have Keenan Allen, who's starting to get older. Michael Williams, who's shown progression over the last couple of years, but isn't anywhere near the 10th pick of the draft that he was chosen a few years ago. Then you have Hunter Henry, who can never remain healthy. They did go and get Joe Reed, I think in the 5th round, and then Hamler, I think in the 7th round. So we don't really know how good these wide receivers are. They're not, first or second round receivers. And then you have Eckler and Jackson, and then the rookie Joshua Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
There are enough weapons around him. I mean, the offensive line, again, as we were talking about with Burrow, isn't very good either. So you have players that are not healthy. You have, great players like Keenan Allen going at the end of his career, or on, not at the end of his career, but not going up any higher. He's not going to progress. And then you have Henry injuries and some rookies, and Eckler. We don't even know how good he is, really. I mean, he had a great year last year, but he can fall on his face this year. So what do you think of those weapons in that offensive line? Is that going to be kind of disastrous for what we both believe Herbert's going to come in maybe week 5, if not earlier, and take over?
Yeah. So I think that Herbert, let's say he does come in week 7, week 8. And, I think that, that'll save him from a lot of the punishment that he'll get if that offensive line doesn't hold up. But the way I look at it is, just simply in terms of comparing him to Tua Tagovailoa, I know there are a lot of questions with the receivers over in in LA, but the overall weaponry, I think, is much better in LA compared to Miami. I mean, with the Dolphins, you're pretty much talking about Devontae Parker, who had like one really good season and a bunch of guys, I mean, if you can get excited about Mike Gesicki, but, he's another guy who's unproven. So, and the other thing is that, Keenan Allen, I know he's probably a little closer to the end than he is to the beginning of his career, but I think pound for pound, I mean, Keenan Allen that's the perfect guy for a rookie to develop because he is such a great route runner.
Yes.
I put him right up there, like within the top 5 guys, maybe with, players like Devontae Adams in terms of, being a pure technician as far as running patterns. And I think having a player like that you can lean on, I think that's going to help a young player like Herbert immensely, just like Joe Burrow, in that he's going to have a veteran like AJ Green to lean on, hopefully if, Green stays healthy, of course. But I overall, I'm not too concerned about the weaponry surrounding Justin Herbert. He does have 3 running backs, all with different skill sets, and and as far as Eckler goes, is he going to be a workhorse? That remains to be seen. But they do have 2 other younger players in Kelly and Justin Jackson, who I think also are going to help the young quarterback as well. So I'm not too concerned about the weaponry. And here's the other thing about San Diego is I like their defense. I mean, in terms of just pure talent, and you talk about the pass rush, you talk about Ingram and Bosa coming off the edges, you're talking about the inside linebackers and Derwin James. I mean, that defense, if it plays to its potential, they might they should put Herbert in a lot of favorable situations where he's playing with the lead and he doesn't have to take a lot of chances. So you do like that as well.
Yeah, I do. And you're right. That defense is going to help tremendously. And I think that's what they're kind of trying to do with Miami as well. But as you mentioned, with just the weapons alone, so you have Keenan Allen as a Charger, and then you're looking at Miami, and you're looking at, okay, which one of these guys is better than Keenan Allen? Devontae Parker? No. Preston Williams? No. Allen Hurns? No. I think you can combine all 3 of those wide receivers, and you make Keenan Allen as one. So as you also mentioned, Mike Gesicki is someone, but he's much as unknown as Austin Eckler or Justin Jackson or whoever else on the Chargers. So, and then the running game. Let's compare that. Yeah, Breida and Howard versus Eckler and Jackson and Kelly. I think I'm more leaning towards the Eckler side. So the weapons aren't even close to what the Chargers have comparable to the Dolphins.
Right. And just getting back to Miami, you bring up somebody like Preston Wilson, a very young, big, promising receiver, but he's coming off an ACL injury, and you don't know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, we've seen players come back from these ACL injuries, especially at the wide receiver position, and it might take them a year to really get back to the way that they normally perform. I mean, we saw that with Allen Robinson in Chicago, where it took him a year to really come back and be the player that, we thought he was going to be early on.
Right. And yeah, exactly. That first year in Chicago wasn't a lot of that, of course, is Mitchell Trubisky, but he wasn't playing to what we know Allen Robinson to be. And then that took him nearly a year just to start going back. And then, Preston Williams is a rookie, so it'll be easier to bounce back. But wasn't he undrafted, or he was? I think he was like close to being a late pick, if not undrafted, if I remember right. But
I believe you're right. I believe he was undrafted. I'll have to check on that. But yeah, no, he wasn't a highly regarded prospect, and at times, I mean, he was uncoverable, 6'5", runs like the wind. But again, coming off that injury, I don't know what to expect out of him. So.
Right. And being such a low pick, how good is he really? I mean, he could be great. We don't know, but I think it's just more to the unknown that I think the chances of him not making anything out of his career due to the fact that he was a late pick or not picked at all, and that ACL injury, I think combines to the fact that he's more on the negative side than the positive.
Yeah, you could be right. And then my number 3 guy, we touched upon him. We spoke about him already, Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, look, I don't mean to denigrate the guy. He has great arm talent, a quick release, throws with the anticipation. He can really spin it. So to me, he is comparable to Joe Burrow in terms of his skill set.
Oh yeah,
the problem is that could be. Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that Tua is the most talented quarterback, hands down, in this draft. But the problem is that he's not very big and he's not very durable. We're talking about a 6-foot quarterback who comes in with these issues already. I think what I'm looking to see with Tua at the next level is, what kind of quarterback is he going to be? Is he going to be that dual threat that he was in high school and into college? Because if he thinks that he's going to be able to succeed playing that way, I think he's going to disappoint a lot of fantasy owners. I think if he commits himself to being more of a pocket passer, I think I can see him being successful, converting to or being more of a pocket passer as opposed to being that dual threat. That runner that he was, over, at Alabama in high school as well.
Now, and I agree with you, especially if he's as banged up as he is. And I think there might be even more that's not even been discussed. But just what we know alone is too much. It's too many injuries to already even to start a career. But let's just say that's all he has. He's obviously someone that can get hurt easily going out of the pocket. So you want him protected. You want him to stay more in the pocket and only escape when necessary. So that would limit his duality. Speaking of just this season, do you think he'll get his start this season? Or do you see Ryan Fitzpatrick being the week 1 starter and being 17 weeks or plus going the whole season as the starter?
Yeah, I think it all depends on how good the Miami Dolphins are going to be. I think that if they're in playoff contention and it's week 10, week 11, week 12, I can really see Ryan Fitzpatrick starting the entire season as long as they're in playoff contention. So, but if they have nothing to play for, then make the fans happy. Give them a reason to be enthusiastic about the team and put in the young guy, give Tua some reps. Now, the other thing is that is Tua going to be ready? I mean, I don't know if Miami has really had a chance to evaluate him from a medical standpoint, because of the coronavirus.
Right.
Have they had a chance to really, see him in person? I know the videos are out there, but that really doesn't. That can only tell you so much. So, but yeah, if Tua is healthy enough to play, to suit up, to be on the active roster, I think he only sees the field if Miami has a bad season. If they're going nowhere, then I think they're going to put him in, and that certainly is going to make a lot of fans happy.
So, if you would put a percentage on him starting week 1, what percentage would you put on out of 100%?
I don't think it's a good idea to start him week 1. I think you rest him. There's no reason. I think the percentage of him playing week 1, I would say right now, is about 20%.
Okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with with a couple of things you say, coronavirus. And here's a guy who hasn't seen the field since November. He hasn't taken a snap since November because of that hip injury. And then where's the cohesion with the offense? I mean, if you can't work with the offense because of coronavirus, you're going to all of a sudden take a month and a half, and then after not even taking a snap since November, and then be the week 1 starter. I don't see it at all.
No, totally agree.
So let's talk your guy. I think he's next on the list, right? Jordan Love. Yeah, he's our next guy.
Is my number 4 guy. Yeah. So overall, in terms of these rookie fantasy drafts, to me, the way I have my players ranked is I have Burrow, Herbert, Tua, and then Jordan Love as my first four quarterbacks in my first tier, and then everybody else after that is pretty much a crapshoot. In Jordan Love, I think what you're looking at is obviously you're investing in the long-term future. He's not going to play this year. He might not even play in 2021, and that all depends on how much longer Aaron Rodgers is going to be in Green Bay. In terms of Love's skill set, I mean, he's got some exciting tools in terms of his pure physical abilities. He's a natural thrower of the ball. He is somebody who, I mean, you see his highlights. He could drop balls into the bucket. He is athletic enough to avoid the rush. However, he also comes with a lot of concerns. And a lot of times, he's got to speed up his internal clock. A lot of times he's hung up on his first read too long. He misses a lot of easy throws. So I think that he ends up in the absolute perfect situation in Green Bay where he could sit down and learn and be coached. And, hopefully, he's a sponge. And I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be a mentor to him because that's not Aaron's job. But if he just puts in his work and tries to get a few tips from Aaron and learns by watching number 12 out there, I think that in a couple of years, Jordan Love can be a quality starting quarterback. I heard the comparisons between him and Patrick Mahomes. I don't necessarily see a lot of similarities. Actually, I think he profiles more as an Aaron Rodgers type. Watching him make some of those throws outside of the pocket with his arm motion, throwing off his back foot or throwing off a 1 foot off balance throws. I mean, to me, I see a lot of Aaron Rodgers in him. But, obviously you're drafting Love for the long term. And I think he's an exciting prospect, but one with a lot of questions.
Now, I know who you write for, sort of the Packers, the affiliates. What are some of the websites that you write for as far as the Packers are considered?
Yeah, right now I'm contributing to 2 websites, PackersTalk.com and PackToTheFuture.com.
I love Pack to the Future name. That's a great name. Now, how did you become a Packers fan?
Well, I am from New York City, and I grew up as a New York Jets fan. But, as time wore on, I got more and more frustrated with the Jets as far as them making just boneheaded decisions, as far as them screwing up their draft picks. And it got to the point where I started watching more Packers games, and I just fell in love with, the whole cheesehead vibe, if you will, where in Green Bay, it's just all about football. And you just have to love the history with Lombardi and with Bart Starr and the Ice Bowl and all of those things and the frozen tundra that I just totally started gravitating toward the Packers, watching them more often, falling in love with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and all of those players. So it was a gradual transition, but eventually, yeah, I turned, full blown cheesehead.
Yeah, I think we kind of have the same similarities there. With my dad was a Raiders fan, so I grew up Raiders, and then I was just like, I just want a team for my own. So I just gradually went into the Colts and went from there. So Jordan Love, bad decision maker, processor, is not so up to skill. He struggles making similar mistakes. A lot of that, I'm thinking Brett Favre, gunslinger kind. What do you think comparable Jordan Love and Brett Favre?
I think that Love is probably maybe a little bit better as far as making plays outside of the pocket as a pure runner, but I definitely see those gunslinger instincts as far as throwing caution to the wind. Whereas Aaron Rodgers is the more careful, the more precise player, where, Aaron Rodgers doesn't care about his completion percentage. He's not going to take a lot of chances if there's a low percentage throw, or if he only has like a 3-yard opening or 3-yard pass open to Aaron Jones in the flat. There's not a lot of upside in that. And Aaron Rodgers, a lot of times, will just throw the ball away. So to me, I think that that's a good comparison. I think Love does have some similarities to Brett Favre from that aspect. And I think, that's another reason why the Packers drafted him when they did, in that maybe they can coach those tendencies out of him over the next couple of years. And being around Aaron Rodgers will lead Love to be more like Aaron Rodgers in terms of his decision making than a Brett Favre.
So I have 2 more questions, and then you can add to this all you want, or even more. Now, does Aaron Rodgers fulfill his contract? I think it's up in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And how well does Love fit into the Packers system going forward?
As far as Rodgers goes, I think the Packers want to keep him around, and they're almost obligated to keep him around this year, just because if they were to trade him, they'd be eating too much dead money. And the same applies for 2021. They would be eating less dead money in 2021, but I think I can see Aaron Rodgers sticking around for another couple of years, but not beyond that. And then, of course, excuse me, of course, if he wins a Super Bowl, then he might stick around for the entirety of his contract. Right. But I think realistically, I think he's there for this year, and he's going to start this year, and there's probably a 50-50 or a 60-40 chance that he's there in 2021. But I think beyond that, I think it's going to be pretty much Jordan Love's show. Then what was the other question again?
Just, I guess, what do you see if it's going to take a couple of years for Jordan Love to see the field? Where do you see the Packers at in those next couple of years? More wide receivers, sticking to the run game, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you look at their draft this year, their whole objective was to improve the running game. They take A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round. They draft a blocking tight end and Josiah DeGuara in the 3rd round. And then they take 3 offensive linemen in the later rounds. So that is an indication that Matt LaFleur wants to be more like the San Francisco 49ers. He wants to pound that football. He wants to bludgeon teams to death. and he doesn't want to be the type of team that's going to turn over the ball a lot. He wants a quarterback that is going to be somebody that follows the game script. And that's the problem he has with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, a lot of times late in games, you've seen this, he could be a little bit of a freelancer, and he can get away with it a lot of times just because he is so experienced, he is so talented. But I think that the thinking in Green Bay is build up that offensive line, get that blocking tight end, get that big 250-pound workhorse in A.J. Dillon, and we're going to be the type of team that's just going to pound the ball, that's going to maybe win some games ugly, but not turn over the ball. And we're going to beat you with that running game. We're going to beat you with their defense and not make a lot of mistakes. And I want a quarterback, Matt LaFleur's thinking, I want a quarterback that's going to carry out the game plan exactly the way I want. And obviously, it's going to be a lot easier for him to do that with a young quarterback as opposed to Aaron Rodgers, who is very close to LaFleur's age. Rodgers might be thinking a lot of times, I know more than this guy, or I know just as much as this guy, or I got, some better plays in the back of my head than LaFleur does. And so a lot of times you might think that two guys who are that close in age, there might be a camaraderie there, but a lot of times there's a disconnect because, that quarterback, that veteran quarterback is so knowledgeable, so experienced. And I think that's the other reason why they took Love that, some people are not talking about, is because I think, Love is going to be a lot more moldable than Aaron Rodgers is.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that here you are as a veteran Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback, he's already in the Hall of Fame, and a new coach, and Rodgers is set in his ways. He's already knows what he wants to do and how he's going to do it. And then there's not really that. I mean, there could be camaraderie. There might not be. It doesn't really matter because it depends on what matters is the performance on the field. And I think there's an understanding maybe between those two. But then here he is, Jordan Love coming in, and he can mentor Jordan Love where he can't mentor Rodgers, just because Rodgers is he's already a veteran. He's already who he is. There's nothing to mentor. So I think I agree with that. I think that's going to be important, especially if they continue to their winning ways, and if he's still the coach, which is going to be interesting to see. But what do you think? Do you think he's anywhere near a hot seat?
Rodgers, you're talking about?
LaFleur.
Or LaFleur? No. I think, coming off a 13-3 season, I think his job is very safe. And I think that, he works well in concert with his GM, Brian Gutekunst. And I don't think he's going anywhere soon. I think he's going to have to put up a couple of back-to-back losing seasons before you could say that he is going to be on a hot seat.
Okay. So yeah, obviously that last year's season, even though it ended kind of abruptly or in a disastrous kind of way, it was still a really good season for a new coach. And so you definitely see Love being under that tutelage as soon as he starts becoming the number one guy.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing with LaFleur is that he had a big hand in this year's draft. I mean, Gutekunst could say what he wants, but, I think, LaFleur, he had his hands all over this draft in terms of, the type of offense that he wants in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Gotcha. So let's just sort of recap our top four guys. We all see the same way. Our 1 through 4 guys are 1 through 4. We both say Burrow at number 1, Herbert at number 2, Tua for 3, and Love at 4.
Yep.
And our next guy we don't agree with, and that is Jalen Hurts. And maybe Jacob Eason for me is a little homerism going on. But I think you could probably make a case for either one of them. let's talk Jalen Hurts. What do you like about him, and what makes him your number 5 guy?
Well, the reason why I picked the number 5 is not because I'm in love with him. I'm not. To me, I think Jalen Hurts is a quarterback with legs, or I'm sorry, a running back with an arm. How's that? Uh, he's a running back with an arm. And so the reason why I put Hurts in front of Eason is because of the situation that he lands in. When you take a quarterback in the second round, you're not saying, oh, well, he's going to be my third string quarterback, or he's going to, be my emergency guy. No, you're taking him because you think he's going to play at some point. Now, whether or not Wentz stays healthy, I think they're going to find ways for Hurts to contribute in the offense, whether it's as a gadget player, as a running back, whatever it is. So that's the only reason why I put Hurts above Eason, is because I think he will see more playing time early. And I think that, again, when you take this player in the second round, you're saying he is going to be a major piece to the offense. Now, as far as Hurts goes, there's a lot to be concerned about if you think that he's going to be a starting quarterback anytime soon. His deep accuracy is non-existent, and I actually wrote an article about him prior to the Eagles drafting him, because back then the Packers were talking to Jalen Hurts. And so I went back and I looked at a lot of his games that he played, and even on big plays that went for 40 yards, 50 yards, the ball was not thrown accurately. His receivers had to contort themselves. They had to stretch. They had to dive to make a lot of those catches. And so I just think that, where he played in the Big 12, I think those defenses there, he saw the openings were a lot bigger. I think he's going to have a much harder time in the NFL. And we saw that in that game versus LSU in the playoff game, where, he went up against a much better defense, and a lot of his warts came out. And you take a look at his throwing motion, and Jalen Hurts is all arm. You don't see him use his hips. You don't see him use his lower body a lot when he makes those throws. And when you're just going all arm, a lot of times you don't know where that ball is going to go. And I know that he tried to make corrections to that throwing motion in the Senior Bowl, but that's the Senior Bowl. I mean, that stuff doesn't stick a lot of times, I mean, we can go back and, I remember, Tim Tebow playing in the Senior Bowl years ago, where, they had he had a more compact delivery, and, then he goes on to Denver, and, he's got that long delivery once again. So, I don't have a lot of faith in Jalen Hurts being anybody's starting quarterback for the long term. I think he is somebody who can get you through some games if Wentz gets hurt. But as far as him being a franchise guy, somebody that you can rely on for, 5 years being your starting quarterback, I just don't see it.
Do you think maybe that's why the Eagles drafted him, is for that purpose only? Because if you're looking at Carson Wentz's contract, right, it's 2025. That's when he's up signed to. Now, of course, I'm sure there's stipulations in there where they can probably, re-sign him, or, whatever. There's always cautions as far as owners putting a long-term deal in. But for the most part, it's up at 2025. And you make a good point with that second round pick. Why draft someone in the second round when your starting quarterback has a contract up to 2025? It's really confusing to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it confuses me too. So maybe he's just a high-priced insurance policy because of Wentz, and because of the fact that he's already had a host of injury concerns over his short time in the NFL. I mean, so, and then the other thing is that they have to be thinking that, Hurts is going to be able to contribute in some other ways. Maybe they have a lot of like trick plays where they have both quarterbacks on the field at the same time. I think you take a look at that Philadelphia Eagles draft. They added a lot of speed in that offense. They have a lot of speed now at wide receiver. And so I think that, they want to come up with a lot of innovation. They want to come up with a lot of innovative plays, a lot of trickery. And I think that Hurts is going to be a part of that. But again, I mean, as far as him being a starting quarterback, I mean, I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I can definitely see him being sort of the Taysom Hill kind of guy, where he's gonna line up wherever, and as you're saying, the wide receivers have a lot of explosive speed with them, so they're gonna clear the underneath intermediate routes, which is obviously important for Ertz and Goddard, and I think you get the ball in Hurts's hands, who has a lot more speed than those guys. He can make a variety of damage. Then they also added, they just went wide receiver crazy. They got Rieger in the second, Hightower in the fifth. They add to Jeffrey and Jackson. So they definitely don't want to have that slippery.
And they also picked up Marquise Goodwin, I believe.
That is true. Or a trade with 49ers.
And a trade, right. Okay, right. Okay.
And you're right about that. So it's I mean, they don't want to have Mac Brown as their starting wide receiver going into the playoffs anytime soon. So, and I think that's pretty good too. If Jalen Hurts can sort of become a quarterback that we both are like, I don't know about, he is going to have those weapons that he got drafted with, which is, being able to have him have some cohesiveness. So with that said, why did you go Hurts over Eason, who Eason is definitely in the Colts' future, because I mean Eason might even start this year sometime if Phillip Rivers is even worse than he was last year. Why take someone that is probably not going to be a starting quarterback over someone that's going to be a starting quarterback?
Well, that's because Indianapolis took Eason in the fourth round, and so to me, yeah, it's great value. I'm sure they liked them the whole way, but still they took him in the fourth round. And when you take a quarterback that low, the numbers tell you that more times than not, that quarterback is not going to be a starter at the next level. So that's the way I'm looking at it. As far as Eason goes, there are a lot of things not to like about Eason either. But I think he does project and profile as a starting projects more as a starting quarterback than Hurts. But again, I'm just playing the percentages, and that's why I went with Hurts over Eason.
Yeah, and I see a lot of Brock Osweiler in Jacob Eason, someone who's a statue, who can make some of the throws. I think he definitely has a better arm than Osweiler did, but just those inaccuracies, the slow progression reads. He'll lock onto receivers, and if as I like what you said, is the pocket gets muddy, then he starts to fall apart. He'll start to see ghosts, and obviously that's not what you want out of a quarterback. Is someone who sees ghosts.
Yeah, definitely. He's somebody who panics versus the blitz, doesn't process things quickly, and yes, he has a great arm. But if he's late to process things, and we've seen this in the past with many talented quarterbacks, they'll just eat you alive.
Yeah, they'll just start putting pressure on you from all different angles. You won't know where they're coming from, and you'll just start breaking down, making mistakes, throwing interceptions, incompletions, and game over. And you just, it's pretty much over. So let's look at the next guy. We both have Morgan up next at 7. Why don't we talk a little bit about James Morgan? I mean, obviously we're getting into the parts where these guys are career backups. Maybe, one out of a million shot. Maybe someone will make a splash. But for the most part, these guys are not going to be, coming onto teams or be fantasy relevant. But they might have some relevancy. So let's talk number 7, James Morgan.
Yes, so to me, James Morgan was my last draftable quarterback. I have some others ranked behind him, but this was the last player in my rankings list that I wanted on my team, as a rookie quarterback. And what you love about him is, hey, first of all, he's a Green Bay native, so you got to like that about him. And you don't see a lot of quarterback talent coming out of that part of the country. But what you like about James Morgan is number one, his size, 6'4". He's got a big arm, and when you watch him play, he is fearless. Not because he takes off and runs, but because he hangs in the pocket. He keeps his eyes downfield. He'll step into the pocket, step into his throws, even with defenders in his face, and he's gonna chuck that ball downfield. So I like that about him. I like the fact that he has shown an ability to go through his progressions. And so now he lands in a spot in the New York Jets where he's behind another young quarterback in Sam Darnold, one of the youngest quarterbacks in the league. And so you would think that, he's probably got no chance of playing in the next few years. But hey, Sam Darnold's not a given either, man. I mean, he has his own set of warts. And if Darnold goes down with an injury, I don't see anybody on that Jets roster. I don't see any veterans that's going to stand in between or stand in the way of Morgan, being that next quarterback. Now, between now and the start of the season, maybe the Jets do go out and sign a Joe Flacco, quite possible. But in the long term, though, I think Morgan is going to be that QB2. And I like a lot of his qualities. Now, obviously, he's not mobile, but he does have a big arm, and when he's healthy, he is accurate. So I like Morgan. I like this pick, and I think another reason why the Jets made this pick is because I know that the Patriots were high on Morgan as well, and so just kind of to keep him off that Patriots roster, the Jets are like let's add him to the mix.
And I agree with you on Morgan. I think I can see a future with him. I can see where there's a possibility that Sam Darnold is the next Mitchell Trubisky, where they're just like, it's enough. We can't do nothing with you. And James Morgan comes in, who is sort of Sam Darnold comparable, someone who's not as mobile, not greatly mobile, especially as we're talking about, someone like a Jalen Hurts or a Tua, those kind of guys. He can move around the pocket, but he's not going to take off and run 40 yards. Accuracy is a problem. Platforming, he will make some bad decisions off his throwing bad off a bad platform. And then he loves to throw that rocket. I mean, the guy can be 3 yards away from him, and he's just going to drill him in the chest with an 800-mile-per-hour fastball. So he needs to learn how to dial that down a little bit.
Right.
But there is a future with him. I think there is, and if Sam Darnold continues to be Sam Darnold, then James Morgan as a late pick on your draft isn't really all that bad.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Sam Darnold. I mean, a lot of people anointed him as the next great franchise quarterback with the New York Jets. The next Chad Pennington, if you will, or whoever you want to compare him to. But there were some games. I mean, I go back to that Monday night game against the Patriots last year where he said it himself. He was seeing ghosts. You don't want to hear that from your quarterback.
Right.
Maybe if he's a rookie, but he was in his second year, and he was telling his coaching staff that he was seeing ghosts. That is not something that's going to elicit a lot of confidence in me as a fan or as a fantasy player as far as Darnold goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm staying away from Darnold, redraft or dynasty. I'd rather just. In fact, I mean, I might go Morgan over Darnold. Just because I'm being a little sarcastic, but it is. I think it is a thought. I don't think you can dismiss it as something that is not something you can think about. Because if Morgan is a future, I don't see Darnold being the present. And so who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, I agree with you. I think Morgan definitely can be a starter sometime soon. Then next we have. We both have Fromm up, and Jake Fromm. Now, what? Okay, so we know who Josh Allen is. What in the in the world is Buffalo doing, taking some guy that is the complete opposite of Josh Allen, playing him, he has just the weakest arm, and putting him in the frigid cold of Buffalo? I still can't wrap my head around. I mean, at least Jordan Love has some kind of makes sense to that pick. I can't make any sense of Jake Fromm going to Buffalo.
You know, a lot of times, and I agree with you about Fromm, but a lot of times you have to take a look at these prospects individually, and you have to start thinking from the aspect of what they can do and not what they can't do. And what Jake Fromm is good at is he is smart and he's accurate, you know, and he's confident, and, you know, he can go through his progressions, and he's played in the SEC. So he's played against good defenses. So you like that about him, and he's a good teammate as well. So if anything were to happen to Josh Allen, you know, the game plan is going to be a lot different, obviously, but you put Fromm in there, and what they're thinking probably is maybe we can have somebody in there who's going to know the plays, know how to run them, and he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. And we're going to lean on our defense, and he's just going to move the ball, move the chains, and make sure that we don't lose the game instead of putting up 40, 50 points, which, you know, Josh Allen's, you know, obviously more of the type of quarterback that can do those types of things. But yeah, I mean, Fromm, to me, I think he's somebody that I'd be more excited about as a pure Bills fan and not as a fantasy player. You know, I think that he could develop into a very good backup. But to me, he's more of a Chase Daniel type, a guy who's going to be holding a clipboard for most of his career. And so from a fantasy perspective, I mean, I really don't have much use for him on my team. As you said, he doesn't have much of an arm, but even beyond that, he lacks mobility. And so he really doesn't bring much to the table. And while he's accurate on those short to intermediate throws, his accuracy wanes on the deeper stuff, and that's a product of his lacking arm strength. So as far as Fromm goes, again, more of a I think he's a better real life quarterback than fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I think it would serve him well if he was in a West Coast system, so where he could just sort of drop back, throw 5 to 7 yards, read the defenses, you know, that where he can use his cerebral and his short intermediate accuracy, and not this system that Buffalo has. So I don't know if they're drafting him in the 4th round and hoping to ship him off later no, they drafted him in the 6th round, right? And hope, or whatever round it was, and ship him off for a 3rd or 4th round, you know, in a couple of years or what. But he definitely does not fit in Buffalo at all. So yeah, I would definitely put him. I wouldn't draft him. Yeah, I don't think he's draftable. Now, we kind of switch off. You have Luton. I have Gordon. Why don't we speak more? Gordon is sort of in the future. I mean, I don't see him with Russell Wilson being anything. He's sort of just another future guy that we'll see what happens. But I do believe that Luton has a potential being behind Gardner Minshew, who's unproven. Let's talk a little bit about Luton.
Yeah, well, Jake Luton is a big quarterback, 6'6". He's a pro-style quarterback, so you do like that about him. And he didn't turn over the ball much over at Oregon State. He throws a nice deep ball, but he doesn't have elite arm strength, but he throws a nice, deep, accurate ball. Now, some of those balls sail on him, but I also saw him complete a lot of those balls. So I guess you could say he has inconsistent deep accuracy, but he's got stuff that you could work with. He's not a real mobile guy. And he also made a lot of one-read throws at Oregon State. So I think that what you have is a big quarterback. He made a lot of big plays at Oregon State, pro style, smart. And if anything were to happen to Gardner Minshew, I know that they picked up Glennon. So Glennon's going to be the QB2 there. I like Luton more down the road. I think that right now he's going to start off as the QB3, but maybe in his second year he'll be the QB2, or third year he'll be the QB2. And I think that if he has to step in for 3 or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, if the number one quarterback is hurt, I don't think that he'll make your offense look bad. I think he can win some games with Luton, depending on the talent that he's surrounded with. So I think he's okay. I think he could be his upside is just being a decent backup quarterback, nothing more and nothing less. The thing that would worry me about, now if you have like any expectations about him being a number one quarterback, I don't think that's going to happen, even if Minshew falls on his face, because let's face it, Jacksonville's not going to have a great team this year, and they could very well be picking number one. And next year's quarterback class is going to be even better than this year's. And so, yeah, I just view Luton as a career backup, but a nice backup. Maybe I'd say his highest upside, his highest ceiling is maybe being like a Kyle Orton type. But overall, yeah, I'm okay with him. Now, you brought up Anthony Gordon. I actually like Anthony Gordon better, but because of where he landed, it's like Anthony Gordon's never going to see the light of day, man. I mean, playing behind Russell Wilson, he never misses a snap, never misses a game, and he's only, 30 years old. And so you could see Russell Wilson playing for the next 10 years. And so I can't see an opportunity there for Anthony Gordon in terms of him getting any playing time.
Yeah, I think you said it. It was being behind Russell Wilson, and has Russell Wilson ever been injured?
He has, but he plays through injuries, though. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't go back and look at how many games but I would be surprised if he's missed more than 2 games per season. I'm sure there's a lot of 16 games played in his career. So not only are you dealing with the fact that he's long term, but the dude never gets hurt, and it's also he was probably the best, since we're talking about Minshew, Gordon in Mike Leach's system, who is more of a statistical producer than actual producing a quarterback for the NFL. But just looking at his statistics, Gordon was top. I mean, he was better than Minshew, better than Falk. Stats can go a long way, and I think here they definitely do. It'd be interesting to see what would happen, but I'm sure that everybody wants to stay away from Gordon as far as a quarterback, especially when you have Russell Wilson as your quarterback one. So, yeah, I agree.
I think the best thing that can happen to Anthony Gordon is that he gets traded in about 2 or 3 years, to a team that, is really deficient at the quarterback position, and then he'll finally get his opportunity. But right now, it's just unfortunately, he's fallen into a black hole.
Yeah. There's just no way. It's not going to happen for him in Seattle at all. So I think that'll do it. Just quick rundown. For the first 4 quarterbacks, we have the same: Burrow, Herbert, Tua, Love. We switch a little bit at QB5. You have Hurts, I have Eason, and then I have Eason, and you have Hurts. So we sort of switch there at 5, and then Morgan from Luton, and then I have Morgan, Fromm, and Gordon. So we're pretty much right down the line. I think we kind of agree with that. Next week, do you want to discuss running backs or wide receivers?
We could do running backs.
Okay, I like that. We'll do running backs next week. And for Ralph, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Hit that like button, share, do whatever. It helps us out. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Ralph. Take care, man.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Good seeing you. Bye.
Good seeing you too. Bye.